if you are intentional about what's needed in order to hit the goal, now your actions have purpose, right?
Yeah.
Most people's actions don't have purpose because there's no definite outcome. So I always tell people, like, let's say once again you have a 7-figure goal, you need to know exactly what the foundation needs to look like in order to hit 7 figures. Welcome back to the Leaders Only podcast, where we talk about business, leadership mindset, and just pretty much anything revolved around building an incredible life. One of the reasons that I started this podcast is because I felt like on the way to where we're at now, there wasn't really a place to go to learn tangible skills that are needed in order to succeed and further yourself and just get better overall in every area of your life. And so some background about me, I built a sales company that does over 8 figures a year. I own over $10 million worth of real estate, and I've built a multiple 7-figure income that's streamlined and in all honesty doesn't really need me. I plan on teaching you and documenting everything that I learned along the way. And if you get something out of today's message, if you can do me a favor, if you can like, share, and subscribe, it will give us the ability to further our message and help more people, which is what we're all about. Thank you guys so much. Let's dive in. And today we're joined by 2 of my brothers, and I'll introduce them here in just a second. But if you guys ever have questions that you guys want us to answer on this show, you guys can DM on Instagram. You guys can comment in the Q&A videos on YouTube. You guys can send us the questions really anywhere, and we'll make sure that we'll answer those questions here on the show. But with that being said, I got 2 of my brothers. You guys are familiar with Chris Nott, who's on today. How's it going on, man?
Going great, brother. How are you?
Doing good. And first time ever appearance, showing up in a cowboy hat and some cowboy boots. He's never ridden a horse before. We talked earlier about riding a donkey, but that's about it. We got
a couple donkeys, coach.
We got Anthony Franco that's on the show. How are you guys doing?
What's going on? Anthony Franco, El Caballero Güero, El Cabrón, whatever you want to call me, coach.
Is that all the words that you've ever learned in Spanish?
You just made all those up on the spot.
Something like that.
Well, perfect. Well, hey, I'm excited to be with you guys. I know we're diving into a bunch of great stuff. I wish I knew that I was supposed to wear a hat today because both of you guys showed up in hats, and I'm just over here needing a haircut.
It's all right. Hey, you didn't catch the memo, but I didn't catch the memo that we were supposed to ride a donkey to the studio today. So
yeah, you can ride a donkey tomorrow.
All right. Next time.
As long as we're all on the same page.
All right. Well, hey, dude, super good to be back with you. I think we should talk about scaling businesses because I know it's your favorite subject and what you're best at. And, a couple of things I've been noticing lately is that most people are kind of just doing their day-to-day work where their intention is to scale their business, but it seems like they're not really going anywhere and they're kind of just in hopes that their business is going to one day take off, and it really doesn't.
Yeah.
And then there's the other, smaller majority of people that you can just kind of tell that it's like flowing. It seems like they're always scaling their business. It's effortless almost. And what would you say is, from your opinion, somebody who's been successful in scaling a business, what would you say is the difference between the two?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a couple things, right? Like most people just go through the motions. That's it. They show up, they get somewhere every single day at the same time, or at least a select few do, right? But they just go through the motions. There's no intentionality behind the work. There's no intentionality behind each action. There's no intentionality behind each hour of every single day. And so I think most people are kind of just wandering through the day, or they're just going through routines rather than intentionally putting in the work necessary that leads to the outcome in which you want, right? So let's say your goal is to build let's just keep it simple, a 7-figure business, right? And you know that in order to build a 7-figure business, you're going to need, let's just say for simplicity, 10 people in a leadership role in order to distribute $100,000 in revenue per year, right? So you want to build $1 million business, you need 10 people to do $100,000 a year in revenue, and now you're having a 7-figure business, right? Well, most people just show up every single day just thinking that if I just do this every day, it's going to pop off. If I just keep working every single day, it's going to pop off. If I just keep talking to certain people every single day, it's going to pop off, and I'm just going to magically get to $1 million 7-figure business. And that's just not how it works, right? Like I know for me, it was, I'm going to lock in on 10 people in order to get to that million, right? So who are my 10 people? Who are the 10 people, or the people that have influence? Who are the ones that have the ability to lead people? Who are the ones that have the ability to help scale this thing? And then spending time intentionally equipping them with everything that they need to be efficient in that position. And so I think most people just think, all right, I'm just going to find someone and they're naturally or magically going to go become that producer in my business or producer in my organization. And that's just not it. And so I think most people are just not intentional, right? They just kind of show up, they go through the motions. They think one day it's just going to work out. One day they're just going to find that person. One day they're just going to, come across somebody that makes their dreams come true.
Like gambling.
Yeah, it really is. They just show up kind of like a wandering generality versus being a meaningful specific, right? And so those that have businesses that just keep on growing and keep on growing and keep on growing, they're extremely intentional about everything that they do. They're intentional about each action. They're intentional about the conversations that they have. They're intentional about who they're working with. They're intentional about their time and how they divvy it up, right? They're not giving, they're not spreading out their time equally amongst everyone. They're being very intentional about who's getting their time. And that's how they look at things, right? Like, would you invest all your money into a stock that was going to be a dud?
Absolutely not.
Of course not, right? Yeah. So they're very, very careful and intentional about where they're investing their time, because time is more valuable than money. So if you invest your time properly, imagine the rate of return you can get on your time.
For sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
I never thought about it, but when he said that, it's like that one time where back in the day, like BC Franco, before Christ, I was messing around, single downtown. And I remember he brought me to your home and he said, hey, bro, you're messing up. You're spending a lot of money. You're acting dumb, being, with women and all that stuff. And you had me intentionally write down exactly what I wanted in a woman. And about 55 days later, I met my wife, right? So like you got to get intentional, awesome. Not just, shoot from the hip, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, dude, that's exactly it. I mean, it's because it's your RAS. I mean, you guys, everybody hears me talk about this all the time. And, I learned it from Ed, right? Which is your reticulator activating system. And it filters in what's needed to hit a goal, right? So if you are intentional about what's needed in order to hit the goal, now your actions have purpose, right? Yeah. Most people's actions don't have purpose because there's no definite outcome. So I always tell people, like, let's say that once again, you have a 7-figure goal. You need to know exactly what the foundation needs to look like in order to hit 7 figures. A lot of people ask me like, hey, Matt, what's your 2024 goal? To lay the foundation for what I want to accomplish in 2025. Matt, what's your 2025 goal? To lay the foundation for what I want to accomplish in 2026. So I am intentionally taking action this year to set myself up for an explosion next year. I'm intentionally taking action this quarter to set myself up for the quarter that I want, for the second quarter that I want. So I just know that everything is cause and effect. So the work that I put in today is going to lead to the results that I get tomorrow. So if I want X results, I need to know what work I need to put in today, so that way those results come. Yeah. Versus, once again, just thinking that one day it's going to magically happen.
For sure. You think you were always like that? Or do you think that that was something you developed over time?
I don't think I was necessarily always like that. I think it's something that I just kind of developed over time, and having great mentors and things like that in my life. And
for sure, good examples.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask. So you're talking about scaling a 7-figure business, and in any business, even in multiple businesses, and you've succeeded. What about that guy who's grinding right now, knocking doors on solar? That guy who's grinding in the financial industry, that real estate agent. They're just crossing over that 6-figure. When you make your first 6 figures, like, dang, I finally got here. But at the end of the day, there's a whole different mindset. There's different habits. There's just a different flow in the way you live from getting 6 to 7 figures. What are, for the listeners who are grinding right now, what are 3 action steps you can say that flip the switch from a 6-figure mindset to, okay, now I'm here. How do I get to 7 figures? Right. Yeah. What would you say are some action steps there?
It's going from working in your business to working on your business, and going from becoming skillful to helping other people become skillful. So the processes change, right? Because it's very easy to teach yourself, right? It's easy to teach yourself something for the most part, right? If you learn the basics and you just practice over and over and over and over due to repetition, naturally you're going to become skillful. But it's creating a process where other people become skillful. That's really what it comes down to. Can I create a process that streamlines other people becoming successful? Can I create a process that streamlines other people's ability to operate without me being there? And I think that's really what it comes down to. It's going from working in your business to working on your business, and working on your business is streamlining things. How do I make things more simple? How do I remove thinking? How do I make it so anybody can do this? What training programs do I need to put in place to equip people to be able to have the confidence they need in order to service a customer or service a client? What processes do I need to put in place in order to teach someone what they need to know in order to be able to take care of a customer and take care of a client.
Yeah.
What processes need to be there to make sure that after the customer gets helped, that customer stays a customer for the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years versus just a one-time thing, which isn't good for business. And so it's creating systems around everything. So that way, once again, people don't have to think. And that's kind of working on the business, right? And then once again, having the processes in place to find talent and skill. I don't think most people attract talent and skill into the organization the way that they need to, and or the way that they even want to. I think, once again, I think most people are in this stage where they just hope the right people are going to come into their business and everything's going to shift. And that's just not how it works. You attract the right people into your business. You don't just find them.
If you're constantly hoping, you're just going to attract a bunch of people that also hope.
Yeah, exactly.
And nothing's ever going to get done.
Exactly. Like somebody asked me, I remember this years ago, and he looked at me and he goes, dude, I wish that I had people like X, Y, and Z in my business the way that you do. And that was exactly what I said. I said, well, that's the difference. Like, I expect it. I know for a fact that they're coming. And the reason that I know that they're coming is because I tried to be the person I want in my business, right? So if I want to attract a whole bunch of people that show up early, like, I have to show up early. If I want a whole bunch of people that are competitive and intense, then I have to be that. If I want a whole bunch of people that are integrity driven and character driven, then I have to be that. So I just realized that however I am, I attract. Yeah. And so over the years, when I focused on becoming, I have actually found more versus focusing on finding more. I think people do things backwards. They focus on finding. I focused on becoming, and by becoming, I ended up finding.
Yeah, well, that creates sustainability too. But I want to backtrack because I don't want to lose this thought. You're talking about systematizing things, keeping things simple. But how do you decide what things still need your attention and then what things to systematize? Because I think that's where some people get caught up, and maybe they aren't really sure. And then, when they're confused, nobody really moves when they're confused. So
yeah,
you decide.
I like, for instance, people talk a lot about AI, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that we've built into our new business setup is AI that walks people through things. And somebody asked me, they said, Matt, that's basically an SOP, a standard operating procedure that you guys have in place that's going to help people get licensed quickly. Is that going to replace people? And the answer to that question is no, because human interaction is there. That's to assist people to be able to answer questions. That's not to replace, right? So I think no matter what, something has to be driven. Like, you have to drive whatever you want more of. Okay. So if you want more sales, you got to drive more of that. That needs your attention. So I looked at what created the greatest returns in my business. And then that's where my energy goes. Right. So for me, it was a couple of things. Number one, it was leadership development and people development. That's it. The more people that I'm developing, the more sustainable the business comes, because my portfolio becomes diversified, because I have a whole bunch of people that I can count on versus just one or two people, right? Like, what did Moses do very well that Joshua didn't? Equip successors, right? Moses equipped Joshua. Moses never got him to the promised land, but Joshua did. But what Joshua didn't do is equip a successor, right? Yeah. And so my thought process is how many successors can I have? Can I create 50, 100, 200. So if I'm no longer there's a whole bunch of people that can operate like me, think like me, make decisions like me, and almost have the thought process of, this is what Matt would do in this situation, and be able to make those judgment calls because we've worked with them so much that I'm no longer needed to be present, if that makes sense, right? So number one is leadership development. I really pay attention to that. Number two is, once again, creating systems and processes so that way you're not needed, right? So that's not necessarily answering the question in a sense of like, what requires your attention and what doesn't. In my opinion, the only thing that really requires all of my attention is leadership development and developing of other people. Everything else I try to systemize, because I can't systemize leadership development. That takes me being involved. I can systemize skill development, but not leadership development, because leadership is caught, it's not taught. So leadership development requires the majority of my attention. Everything else I systemize. Yeah.
Even with the AI, you would still say that's like number one, leadership development, right?
Yeah.
Because he was talking about, you're talking about like numbers and kind of what Moses did. I know it's a Christian podcast here, but if you think about it.
But it is.
Like, it is, but like, think about it. Jesus had 12 disciples, but he had his favorite three, right? Peter, James, and John. that's where he told everything too. Like it's very clear in the Bible. Those are his favorite three. So I think that's crucial because you have a ton of leaders in multiple businesses, multiple organizations, but with those ton, you still put your main focus to a few that get more. You know what I mean? And I just noticed what you've done there, and we've kind of duplicated it in our businesses, which is huge.
Yeah. Well, because I mean, let's touch on that really quick, right?
Yeah.
So we've all heard that 20% of people will lead 80% of the organization, but 20% of the 20% lead that 20%.
Can you say that again?
Yeah. So 20% of people will lead 80% of the organization, but there's a 20% within the 20% that leads the 80% of the 20%.
Oh, yeah.
Because you have leaders that lead followers, and then you have leaders that help lead the leaders. That leads the followers.
Right.
And I think that's the biggest separator. Like that's how you scale. That's how you scale, is having that 20% that's capable of leading the 80%, but then making sure that the other 20% within the 20% are there and can help you influence all the other 20%ers that then go influence the 80%.
For those mathematicians, hope you got that. So I didn't hear him say it again. No, that's huge. Well, Coach, I mean, there's so many things you're talking about in scaling your business. I want to ask, like, what are 3 things that stop people? You know, what are 3 things that, like, you got a guy who's a great photographer, videographer, and they stay that person forever. They don't scale the business. You got that guy who's a great realtor, and they never have multiple agents. They don't scale the business. Like, what are 3 things that you've seen in, you know, almost 15 years of business for you have stopped people the most?
I think the biggest thing is people wanting to be impressive.
What do you mean by that?
They want to be impressive, and so their light shines so bright that other people's light becomes dim. And the only way to scale anything is to help other people's light shine brighter than your own and then dim your own. One of the best pieces of advice that I ever got, there was a guy named Mario Bayona, and I was 19, 20, 21, started having some success early on in my career, started making 6 figures, $250,000 at 21. And he looked at me, he goes, if you want to scale your business, you have to realize that naturally attention is going to go on you because you're young. So there's not a lot of people that are young, that age, that are earning incomes like that. So you're going to be highlighted naturally all the time just because you're an example of success at that age. So you're always going to be talked about. He said it's your ability to, every single time someone shines the light on you, hold up a mirror and reflect it back onto your people. That's going to determine whether or not you scale big. And that's always stayed in my mind. So like every single time the light gets shined on me, all right, I don't like the spotlight. I prefer not to be in it.
Yeah.
I'm just being more introverted. But B, that's always been my mindset. Like the light gets shined, I just imagine myself holding this mirror up and reflecting it on to all of our people, and all the people that we're leading, and help them become that light. And so I think most people, the reason they have such a hard time scaling is a couple of reasons. A, they want to be impressive. They want everyone to look at them and be like, wow, you're so amazing. You're so great. You're such a great speaker. You're such a this, that. Like they want that. And because they want that so much, they never give other people the chance to be that. So that's number 1. Number 2 reason that people don't scale is because they don't know how to lead leaders. Because leading leaders is completely different than leading followers. People who are leaders don't like to be led. As crazy as that sounds. Entrepreneurs don't like to be led. People who are leaders don't like to be led. Somebody asked me the other day, they said, Matt, how come you've been able to work with so many, not in a bad way, but ego-driven leaders who want to be in the spotlight, that want to win, that want to be competitive, that want to be the championship, they want to have their name highlighted, they're significance-driven. How have you worked with all these people? And I told him I never tell any of them what to do. I give recommendations and I let them make the decision. Because as an entrepreneur, the reason I became an entrepreneur is because I hated being told what to do.
Amen.
Yeah.
Right? Like I hated being told what to do. And so I realized that every single time somebody tried to push their agenda on me, I rebelled. And so I realized that the only way to lead leaders is to not try to push your agenda on them, rather than lay out the agenda for them, explain why you're going in that direction, but saying it's your decision. I'm going to support you no matter what it is that you do, and then allowing them to make that decision. And like I said, it's just realizing that's the human nature, right? And I think most people, once again, going back to ego, they want their way to be the highway. And I have no problem with people disagreeing with me. I have no problem with people saying, hey, Matt, I don't agree with what it is that you said. I have no problem apologizing. I have no problem with any of those things. And I think that's one of the reasons that we've been able to scale, is because there is no ego in it. Like if you disagree with me, I'm okay with that, right? Like I actually encourage it, because if you're disagreeing with me, that means you're challenging my thinking. And if you're challenging my thinking, that means that I'm reevaluating myself, which creates growth in me as a leader. So I actually don't mind it in any way. I encourage it, right? But then, like I said, it's just giving. Most people want to be in charge. They want it to be their way or the highway. They want everyone to listen to them. And that's what keeps them from scaling. They want to be in the spotlight. They want to be impressive. And so you have to go from being impressive to impactful.
Yeah, that's huge. That's it's sad to kind of see people like that, where they start to catch traction and they get stuck at that spot and they just want to be, they want to be almost, they go into dictator mode where, they just want to be able to, and, that's not why anybody gets started in business. And so I hate seeing that. And usually a lot of them wake up, but, some of them don't. And that gets, then they stay in the same spot forever.
Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning in. And if you have not had the opportunity to subscribe just yet, if you can go ahead and do that, that would be incredible. We have about 10,000 plus active listeners, and not all of you have subscribed just yet. So if you guys can go ahead and do that, that would be incredible. And hopefully you enjoy the rest of the episode.
Let's talk about systems. I know that we kind of got away from that, but I think that that's what helps scale all businesses.
Yeah.
You kind of mentioned it earlier, right? Keeping things super simple, right? Less thinking, keeping things super simple. Why do you think that's really important, especially when maybe you're in a complex industry where it's, isn't simple? The answer isn't always simple, but when simplifying it, why do you always preach that?
Yeah, great question. Simplicity accelerates execution. It's really what it comes down to.
Simple scales.
Yep, exactly. Simple scales, right? So simplicity accelerates execution, right? And then also, I'm losing my train of thought there. Simplicity, luckily we can cut that out. Simplicity accelerates execution, and the removal of thinking accelerates execution. So everything that I'm doing is always about, how do I remove thinking? How do I remove thinking? How do I remove thinking? How do I create steps where people always know what the next step looks like, right? Like whether that's creating a phase and then having 3 steps within that phase. So phase 1 has 3 steps, phase 2 has 3 steps, phase 3 has 3 steps, phase 4 has 3 steps. So now it's broken down even simpler once again, because you might have, let's say there's 15, right? I would rather have 5 phases of 3 than 15 steps.
That's less overwhelming.
It's less overwhelming. It's easier to focus on. Or I'm in phase 1, 3 steps I got to focus on. I'm in phase 2, 3 steps I got to focus on. I'm in phase 3, 3 steps that I got to focus on. So for me, it's all about, can I simplify everything so everyone always knows exactly what it is that their next step is? And then can I remove the ability for human error, which is very, very difficult to do. And there's no way to do this in a perfect manner. But where do most people drop the ball in any sales business, right? They don't set follow-ups. They don't book return appointments, right? So creating processes in place that literally book out what you need done no matter what, right? So my philosophy has always been, never leave an appointment without an appointment. Never leave an appointment without an appointment. Never leave an appointment without an appointment. And so when it comes to even taking people through a system of getting someone from a dependent situation to an independent situation, it's built in that after you go through day 1, the second day gets booked with clarity on exactly what you're going to do in day 2, right? Once day 2 is finished, part of the system is setting up day 3. So I built in the alley-oop, if that makes sense, into everything. I built in the alley-oop so that way you remove human error. I also try to remove anything that you'd have to remember. So that's a big part too. I always try to remove anything that you have to remember, because if you have to remember it, that means there's a high likelihood that you're going to forget it.
Right.
But if I build it in, now you don't have to remember.
Yeah.
So my goal is to remove remembering. I don't want any remembering. I don't want you to have to remember what to talk about. I don't want you to have to remember what the next step is. I don't want you to have to remember, like this might be step 2, and then you have to remember a part of step 2. Let's make sure that everything is there so you never have to rely on remembering. Whether it's a word track, whether it's a step in the process, I don't want any remembering. I don't want that, because once again, then you have to think, what was I supposed to do? What does that do? Slows down execution.
Yeah.
And so those are the biggest things. Like, it's just simplify to multiply, right? Keep it super simple. Keep it simple, silly, right? In the politically correct way. Keep it simple, silly, and remove thinking. And I think that's what's going to lead to people scaling.
It seems like the 80-20 rule you were talking about, it allows them to shine when you systematize things simple, because now the 80%ers can actually take action with the simple stuff. Whereas even if it is something complex, like we're talking about, the 20%ers who are going to do, the most production essentially are going to take initiative to go figure out the complexities of it.
Yeah.
And now the 80%ers can still get a result, but whereas if it wasn't a simple system, then the 80%ers aren't going to do anything.
Yeah. But then look at it like this, right? Like it's also building in human nature into your processes, right? Like there's structured, technical, action, relationship. Okay. So what if you build into your processes
All four?
Yeah.
Right? What do most action-oriented people struggle with?
Relationships.
Structure.
Right?
Or
a
structure.
combination. Kind of, right? But
All
a
the
big,
above.
right? Like there's differences, right? But like for instance, if I'm an action-oriented person, I'll just take action. But if there's clear steps, I now know what to take action on, right? You look at somebody who's more structured. Someone who's more structured will not take action unless they have a clear step. So the action-oriented person will take action with completely blind. Right? I'm just going to go at it. But then they'll go at it in the wrong direction because there's not a simple process to follow. The structured person is ready to move, but they won't take action unless there's clear steps to follow because they need the structure. Technical people need to understand why it's happening. So it's not just having the system in place, it's not just having the clarity in place, but it's also the understanding of why that is happening. Because if I'm a technical person, I need to know, like I get I'm supposed to do that, but why? Because they want to know the details behind it, right? And then the relational person, it's more about the mission, it's more about the cause, right? It's the why, but not from a technical perspective. It's the why from a relational perspective. Why am I doing this, and whose lives are going to be better because I do it? So now you're building in all four of those things, right? We have structured people taken care of, you have technical people taken care of, you have action people taken care of, and you have relational people taken care of. And I think most people's systems are designed and built by what works for them. So an action-oriented person creates systems that only works for action-oriented people. And I know that because that was me. My first years in business, all of my systems were based off how I operated. And then I realized that everyone doesn't operate like me. And I need to create systems that allows everyone to have success, not just people that think the same way that I do.
On that note, sorry, I know you got probably a question, but when you're implementing these systems, how do you know that your system, how long do you let the system play out until you're like, hey, this maybe isn't working, I need to make this adjustment? Like, where's the period of, all right, it's time to make a change?
Yeah. I don't like making changes in systems. On average, it takes 2 years for businesses to change their system, for everyone to be on the same page. I think that's the case because the leader is not intentionally making the change. If I was intentionally making the change, in 3 months, processes are going to be done. 100%. But then it's also about running beta testing prior to releasing it to everyone. So I don't normally make system adjustments that aren't going to stay for long periods of time, because then we have to backtrack, then we have to circle back around. Everybody's confused. Everybody has to relearn. So before ever releasing anything to basically in a public setting, we beta test it all first to prove that it works, to make sure that it works. So that's a big part of it. And then also making sure that it can work at high volume. Like most people build a system that works like, oh, this is incredible, but it's only incredible because it can handle 20 people. What happens when you get to 1,000?
Yeah.
What happens to you when you get to 5,000? What happens when you get to 1,000,000? Does that same system work with 10 people the same way that it does working with 10 million people? And if it does not work the same, and if it cannot handle that volume, then you're going to have to continue to reteach people new operating systems based off the volume that system can handle.
That just puts me in perspective, me being an athlete, like you see so many great coaches, Bill Belichick, Nick Saban, Phil Jackson, I can just go on and on. Why do they keep winning? And, they're just repeating. It's like they're repeating the same system. But even with, like, you brought up AI, and I'm not trying to get off track here. I've noticed you and great coaches, yes, they keep a simple system, but they're able to, like, you've always taught us in business, it's your ability to learn, unlearn, then relearn, and while redeveloping systems. So I think people think like you just have to run the same thing, the same play over and over again. Like, yeah, you don't want to be cute, but you have to be able to relearn, unlearn. And you've taught us as well doing that. Can you hit on that a little bit on people being able to unlearn and then relearn things?
Yeah. I mean, you said it, right? Like you have to be able to unlearn or relearn, or else you're not going to stay relevant in business. I mean, you look what happened to Blockbuster.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yep.
they're out of business. You know why? They didn't unlearn and relearn. And
They weren't willing to either.
they weren't willing to. They thought this is going to be the route forever, and it's those people that get smacked. It's the people that think that everyone's just going to always follow through and it's always going to work out if I just keep doing what I'm doing once again. And so I think people have to be willing to change. I mean, when COVID hit, there was a system, at least in the industry that we come from, there was a system that was ran for 30 plus years and then overnight didn't work. And I think one of the things that we did very well is we literally every single day for almost a year got together at 9 p.m. and said, okay, we did X, Y, and Z. Did that work for you? No. And we beta tested for 12 months straight, 365 days, every day, where we would get together, mastermind what worked, what didn't work, what worked, what didn't work. And we were willing to sacrifice all of that because our thought process was, let's sacrifice the time and energy now to lay the foundation where moving forward we can explode this thing, right? And I think one thing that, and I mean this humbly, I think one thing that people look at now with what it is that I've been able to build is that there's so many people running it and getting results that it's proven to work. Like that's the difference, right? Like there's there's a track record. So many people. Like somebody asked me the other day, like, how do you know that your system is successful? And I mean this with all the encouragement in the world, and I don't mean this in a discouraging way, but people who most would consider an 80%er, meaning they haven't stepped into that 20% leader influencer that can influence everyone. They haven't stepped into that role where like they're just dominating. They're not somebody that's dominating, but they're someone that's just consistently succeeding. The difference is we have people like that winning. That's how I knew. It wasn't the fact that a 20%er can take it and win, because a 20%er can take anything and win. Yeah. And a 20%er can take literally anything and go win. And you can plug them in badminton, you can plug them in a foosball, put them on, FIFA, right? Donkey racing, you name it, and they're going to go win. I think where you really know a system works is that it's no longer personality driven. It's anyone can take it, apply it, and win. And that's when I knew, I was like, all right, our processes work. Anybody can take it, apply it, and get a result. Anybody can take it, apply it, and win. It was no longer about a select few types of personalities, because for years that was our MO, right? Like it was the same type of personalities. It was the same type of people that were succeeding, getting all the recognition, making all, earning the highest incomes. Those were the people. And then we started having a whole bunch of people that weren't type A action, I'll run through a brick wall. They started winning big. They started succeeding big. And then I realized it's because the systems work. So systems give all personality types the chance to win, not just one personality or another.
And I know you said that in the most encouraging way. I'm not here to be discouraging, but I'm here like everybody who is struggling in a business right now. I don't care what industry you're in. If there's multiple people winning there, stop complaining, stop folding like a lawn chair, right? Stop having a freaking wishbone, have a backbone and be okay. If the system works, then you're probably not working. Because if multiple people are winning, it's got to be, you're not running it to the T. You got to get back with your coach and whatever industry they're in and be like, all right, what am I doing wrong? Because this is clearly what I'm doing. Maybe record yourself. Because I think there's just too many people like have a personality that they don't, like football. Who's that wide receiver that got off the Steelers? Antonio Brown, I think. His personality.
I'm not a football guy.
Yeah, you just
wrong
ride donkeys.
person.
I forgot.
Yeah.
But this guy, Antonio Brown, I'm pretty sure that's his name, from the Steelers. Patrick Bet-David did an interview with him. Like, he was so great at what he did personality, but he couldn't fit in the system. They just NFL and Steelers ended up letting him go. So you got to get out of that personality. It's huge.
Yeah, I think there's two things, right? And this is contradicting. You ready?
Yeah.
The system works, people don't.
True.
But the system could also not work, and you're blaming the people.
Very true.
That's where most people are at. I think that's where most people are at. Once again, as a leader, nobody wants to take responsibility. right? At least, let me say that. Leaders take responsibility. Most people who consider themselves leaders don't want to take responsibility where it's, you didn't put the systems in place. You didn't put the process in place. So most people think, oh, the business works, you just don't work. And they blame it on work ethic. I don't think most people have a work ethic problem. I think they just don't know what to do. That's it. I think most people work hard. I think most people are hard workers. I think most people have a big dream. I think most people want an incredible life. And I think the leader's cop-out is blaming that people don't work hard. Well, why aren't they working hard? Maybe they need clarity. Maybe they don't know what their next step is. Maybe they need an understanding. Maybe they don't know what their dream is. Maybe they don't know what to focus on. Maybe they feel like they're lacking the skills necessary and you haven't done what you needed to do as a leader. I think most people blame their people and say it's their people because they don't want to look in the mirror and say, I'm messing up as a leader. I'm not the leader I need to be. I'm not teaching people what they need to know. I don't have the right processes in place. So they point the finger at everyone else rather than taking responsibility. And I think that's a huge part of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, society normalizes nobody taking responsibility.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people. But, it's people that are succeeding are the ones who can do that the quickest.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
I just always look at it like if there's people that are not winning, well, why? I don't think there's a single person that doesn't want a better life.
Yeah.
That's just it. There's not a single person that doesn't want a better life. It's just our ability to help them get focused and have the belief that they can go after it and have it. That's the biggest thing. And I think systems help with that because once again, it's like, if I can just get to step one, now I got there. Okay, perfect. A level of self-confidence. I got to step one. Now can I get to step two? Now can I get to step three? And now their confidence starts to build as well.
Would you say like instincts are liars too? Because example, you've coached me in one of your businesses before and I was stagnant at 100K for a little bit before we crossed quarter and went on forward. And I realized I always would go with my team and I'd be like, hey, these are my instincts. Like we're doing I would never run anything by, one of our coaches or you back in the day. And I just thought about it. I'm like, my instincts are probably wrong, right? My gut feeling, right? Back in the day, you'd be like, I'm praying to God. I think this is what I need to do. Ultimately, you got to just almost let go of your instincts and say, well, let me believe in the instincts of others who've got those results because systems do work. But if you have a badass coach, excuse my language, but you have a bad coach, you have a coach who can help you, like those systems they just thrive even more. Would you say that?
Yeah. You have to remember that instincts and temptation show up very similar. It's really what it comes down to. Instincts and temptations show up in a very similar fashion, right?
Yeah.
That's why when sometimes I hear people say things like, God told me, right? And the only thing I can think of is like, you realize that the devil was God's right-hand angel, right? Like he knows exactly how to show up, sounding, acting, feeling the same. The difference is the energy behind it. The difference is the intention behind it.
Yeah.
Like, are your intentions pure? Well, if you feel a pure intention, then that means that you were probably operating from instinct. Mm-hmm. If you were feeling a self-gaining gut feeling, that's good. That is probably the adversary. So I think it's being able to tell the difference between instinct, your natural God-given instinct, and temptation that knows how to show up as instinct. I think when you can recognize the difference between those two, that's huge. Because once again, instinct, your God-given instinct, shows up with service in mind. It shows up in a selfless manner. Anytime it shows up in a selfish manner, then that's temptation. That's not instinct. And I think if you can realize that, that will help you make those better decisions.
Y'all need to run that back, re-listen that 5 times. That was huge. I've never heard that was good.
Yeah.
Well, damn.
I've never heard it either.
Let's call it.
I didn't even know I knew that.
So we call an assist, people.
You're guided.
I love it.
Well, let me finish off with this, because I know we're talking a lot about systems, and obviously the bigger the business, the more systems in place. Do you think there's an aspect of business that shouldn't be systematized?
Yeah. I think everything should be systemized, but what you cannot systemize is relationships.
True.
You can't. That's just the one thing that you can't systemize. That's why I said earlier, like, I focus on leadership development and I systemize everything else, because leadership development is relationships. That's what it is. It's all relationships. And so that's the one area you cannot systemize is relationships, because relationships are about connection. Relationships are about genuinely caring about the other person that's sitting across from you. And if you're showing up in a systemized way, that means you're not connecting. You're just doing what the next step is. And I also think that's the difference between those who are successful in leadership and sales or in anything, is there's the person that shows up that follows the script to the T. Maybe they follow the sales script to the T, but they don't get the same result as the person who doesn't. And well, why is that? Because that person showed up and they said all the right things, but there was no connection there because they systemized what was supposed to be said. They showed up in order to say the right things versus showing up with the intention to build a connection and establish a relationship. So relationships cannot be systemized. Any sales presentation, your number one goal should be to establish a relationship. Who cares about all the information? If I don't have you as a friend, I don't have you as a client. If I don't have you as a friend, I don't have you as a business partner. If I don't have you as a friend, I don't have you as an employee. So my first intention in anything that I do is friendship first, business second, because without friendship, I don't have anything else. This is why when people say like, oh, you shouldn't be friends with the people that you're leading, I disagree. I think you should. Yeah, I really disagree with that. I don't think you should give in to certain things. And I think where most people draw the line is they end up getting friend zoned, and then they stop feeling comfortable enough to give real coaching, right? Like, I'm friends with everyone that I'm leading, but I also am willing to draw the line and say, you're messing up here. And I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to be there for you, and we're going to get through this. But I'm willing to have those conversations. So I never get so friend zoned that I can't have tough conversations with people. Because the moment you stop being able to have tough conversations with people is the moment you shouldn't be leading them anymore.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah. Well, Chris, you learned something today. Every donkey you ride has got to be different.
Yep.
I wouldn't know. Never ridden one.
That's where we're going after this for those of you who are watching. Yeah. But hey, today was an incredible day. Love spending time with the both of you, and couldn't be more grateful for our brotherhood, the relationships, and about what we're about to do in the entire industry is very, very exciting, and just couldn't be more grateful for you guys. And so I'm proud of you. I love you both. Guys, if you're listening, thank you so much for tuning in. And do me a favor, if you haven't had the opportunity to like, share, and subscribe, if you guys can do that, that would mean the world to us. Obviously, we put out all this content and information for free, and all we ask is that you share it if you got something out of it. So thank you guys so much, and we'll see you guys next week. Not a Kindle. You outdated, I'm the one they getting into, and I don't break a sweat. Let's get it.